earlier, and lot more activities in terms of bringing in the experts, industry experts, to deliver where the industry is heading to, what kind of technologies we need to focus, etc., etc. Now today, as I mentioned, right, we have a very expertise or vast experience, industry experts, the Arvind Raja Dera as well as Danish Hussain Jaki. These two are from Wipro Technologies, and Arvind being the COO of ACM Hyderabad chapter. Also, he is a distinguished fellow and a chief architect of Wipro. He is an emerging technology champion and vast experience, almost 25 years in industry. And his areas of interest being quantum computing, machine learning, AI, and CC. So he's going to enlighten us along with Danish on API development, and then how to build, design API, implement API, test API, and etc. And Danish is another veteran, experienced senior distinguished member of technical staff in Wipro. He has around 22 years of industry experience. He's a champion of enterprise integration. He leads the integration practice in Wipro, and then he brought in lot of his digital technology expertise in solving many of customer integration problems, and then how best the API can be used in terms of integrating the customer IT landscape, and then providing the very challenging solutions to the customer. So welcome to Arvind Aja Dera and Danish Hussain Jaki. Please take it forward and then enlighten us with the API development workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gopal. I really appreciate it. That's a wonderful introduction. Thanks, everyone. Again, once more, apologies for starting it a bit late. Let me start first. Since this workshop will going to be across 3 different weeks, I want to give a flavor of how we are organizing the content, right? So that you are also prepared and you know what is coming ahead, right? So today's session would be largely introductory in nature. What we will do today is that we will understand what are APIs, why they are important, what is the history behind APIs, and what do we mean by APIs, right? So the APIs can mean anything to anyone. And if you Google it, you'll find 100 different definitions on what is APIs. And it is very easy to get confused. So we will kind of distill the introductory and the basics and foundations of APIs. And then what we will also do today, Danish will kind of take us through how do we, so APIs, and if you see this diagram, right? So probably I can give I can start with this slide first, and then I'll also explain what Danish is going to cover. So I'm assuming you would have heard the word APIs, right? API means application programming interface. That much I'm assuming every one of you would know. So what we will do is we will go a little bit inside of it, right? What exactly it means, right? So I mean API, what the word acronym is easy to understand, but what is actually it means to everyone. So if you see this diagram, in this diagram you see multiple blocks, right? So there is a block on the extreme left-hand side, which is API consumer. I colored it differently because that is not part of the API. It is outside API. And then there is a blue box that you see in the center. That is again not part of the API itself. That is API specification. Specification is essentially the definition of API, what to expect. If somebody wants to use an API, the first thing they need to understand is what is this API going to do? What does it expect me to input, and what I would get as a response, right? It is like a document that says that what an API will do. So that is the specification. Specification is also not part of the API itself. Specification is normally written at the design time. When we are developing the APIs, we write the specification and we give the specification to everyone to use it. Now the next step is what we the extreme right hand blocks. You have three blocks there. One is called API, API implementation, and service. These are the three blocks that make up an API, right? So the dark green colored box, that is the first box on the right hand side, is the actual API that everyone would talk to, right? So that is where the API consumers who are basically using the APIs will talk to the APIs. And then the other blocks that you see, which are on the right hand side, API implementation and service, these basically provide the necessary functionality for the APIs. So what do I mean by functionality? Let us take an example, right? So assume that there is an API which will give us the, if you pass a pin code, it will give us the, what is the locality of that particular pin code, right? So suppose say you're passing a pin code and then it gives the complete details of that particular locality, which state that pin code is, which city, and maybe even a specific locality within the city. Now the API will give us that particular interface. So that API consumer, somebody building e-commerce application for address validation. So as part of address validation, what we will do, we will check whether the pin code is valid or not, right? So to check the pin code valid or not, what will we do? We will call the API. What the API will do, you pass the pin code to the API. Now the API will have to find out whether it is really valid or not. So there has to be a database behind the scenes so that the API can check the database and then find out whether the pin code is valid or not. If it is valid, then it has to find the address details and send the details back to the consumer. That is basically the e-commerce application which is trying to get the API details, right? So what is happening here, if you see it, API is the interface through which the consumer, here the e-commerce application, has asked the details whether this pin code is valid or not. Now what is API doing? API is calling the API implementation. So in the API implementation is where we would have the code that will call the database, it will make a query to the database, and it will check whether the particular pin code is valid or not. And then the database will return the result, and that result is formatted in a way that the e-commerce application can understand, right? So the API will take that result and then it will format as a response and send it back. So if you understand this whole process, so what is happening here, the API is providing a standardized and an open interface so that any application, whether it is an e-commerce application or it can be something like a result verification application, or it could be any application, right? Not the application that we want to design. So these applications can use this API through the standardized and open interface. So anybody can use this API. So that is one of the important part of APIs. So APIs provide a standardized and an open interface so that anyone can use that particular API. And the second job that API is doing is it is abstracting the underlying implementation. So somebody who wants to use the API, for example, in this case, e-commerce application like Amazon is using this API to validate the pin code. Now the API is completely hiding the details in terms of which database is used, how the database is queried, what is coming from the database, how the errors are handled. All of that is hidden behind the API. So API is not exposing any of the details. So the e-commerce application doesn't need to know what database exists in the back. None of it doesn't need to know. So that basically simplifies, right? So the API consumers, in this case, e-commerce application, doesn't need to understand the complexity behind the API. So that is the second job of the API. So API is what they're doing. They're providing a standardized interfaces. They abstract the implementation complexity. And then the API specification, as I talked about earlier, is a design template. It will help people to understand what the API does. So this is basically, in summary, if I have to tell, in 5 minutes what is APIs, this is the summary. Now what Danish is going to do is that he's going to explain further about this API specification. And he's also going to tell you as a consumer, the first step is to how do we use the API. So in today's session, we will basically do a hands-on session on using API. We will take a sample API. We will not develop the API, but we will take an existing API that is already there. and we will use the API. We will develop a API client or API consumer, right? So that is what we will cover today. Hope this is clear to everyone. Then now I'll move to the next slide. So one of the questions that I keep getting is that are APIs new? What were we doing before APIs, right? So if this is a new technology. So first thing I want to tell you is that concept of APIs is not new. APIs have been there for almost 80 years. Ever since computers started, APIs are there in one form or the other, not in the format that currently we see though, right? So the APIs have been evolving over these many years in different shapes and forms. As the technology gets advanced, the APIs are also getting advanced in terms of what they can do, how they are designed, the capabilities they have, and so on and so forth. So what I thought it'll be interesting for you, all of you, is to understand the evolution of the APIs. So you know why we are here and how we came here, right? I'll spend a couple of minutes to give that history. So way back when the APIs originally started, these are called local APIs. Local APIs means in my own computer, and I want to talk from one program to the other program, I used to use local APIs. So what happens in local APIs is that within the machine, I can use inter-process communication. It could be, many different technologies based on the operating system. You can use pipes, you can use different mechanisms, right? Local sockets, or you can just use memory, shared memory, whatever the mechanism is. Or you can even use file system, right? So the local APIs were the original APIs that started, and then the intent, as I said, is primarily to kind of ensure that applications or programs within a particular machine can communicate with each other, right? And why it was used, for example, operating systems used to provide certain APIs so that you can write applications on top of the operating systems. That was the original use case for APIs. Then came network APIs. What do we mean by network APIs? So slowly as we moved on to distributed computers, right? So now we had multiple computers. Then how do we then communicate between the computers, right? So what is the mechanism in which we can integrate? That is where network APIs came. So these uses sockets like TCP or UDP and so on and so forth to or other proprietary networking mechanisms we used to have at the time. And we use them to communicate between machines now, not just within a machine, now across machines. So I can have one program running in machine A and I have another program running in machine B. Now the program running in machine B can talk to machine A, right? So that is where network APIs came. So primarily it is meant for integration. Now came in remote APIs. So remote APIs, what happened is that as we evolved from technology, as we started adopting distributed systems, so there were technologies like CORBA, COM, DCOM, and so on and so forth came in, right? So these are basically models in which we could build distributed applications. One application, but one application distributed across multiple servers. Why we needed that? We needed that because we wanted to scale. The applications become complex. The applications needed more, processing power. So what we did is that we used to distribute the same application into 3 different machines or 5 different machines in a cluster, right? So all of you would have heard of clusters. So in a cluster, how do we develop these applications? So that is where we needed communication between components within an application itself, right? So how do these components communicate with each other in a distributed cluster? So that is where remote APIs came. So what remote APIs did is that they brought in standardization to APIs. So they basically brought in certain interfaces. So DCOM was one of them, CORBA was another. So what they did is that they created a mechanism, Tuxedo, many other technologies were there. And these created a standardized interface so that, so say if you have, a system composed of 20 components, and then each of these components talk to each other, and component A, component B, component C, component D, then if all of them has to talk to each other, how will they do it? So now what these technologies did, for example, CORBA and then later Java JTE, you would have heard, right? So all of them use a technology called RMI. RMI defined how an object exposes its capability as an API so that others can use it. So that is where the standardization came. Now finally, after internet and web, right? So as we adopted web, somebody came with a great idea. Why don't we use web technology itself? Why have to we use something like RMI or DCOM and using all these proprietary technologies that are specific to an operating system? Why can't we use something as open as the web? Because web is everywhere. Any device, any operating system can connect to an internet through web, which is on a browser using HTTP as a protocol. So why don't we use it? So that's where SOAP came, simple object access protocol, right? So many of you would have heard this name called SOAP. So SOAP was one of the earliest technologies for developing APIs using web technologies. SOAP later, there was another technology called XML RPC at the time. So these were the technologies, but the problem there was that, when it comes to SOAP or when it is XML RPC, we never had clear differentiation or a distinction between what is API and what is API's implementation, right? So that was always has been a challenge. So that is where we are currently with web APIs, and this is basically till yesterday, I would say. And then today we moved from these web APIs, and web APIs become much more refined and much more evolved to where we are currently, right? Let me take to the next slide. So this is just a picture before I jump into further slides. So this is a complex application architecture which you normally see in an enterprise. Enterprise, I mean, like if you go to a bank or an insurance company or a retail organization like Reliance or a communications company like Airtel, right? So if you look at any of those enterprises, you would have hundreds of different systems, and each of the system has its own functionality. They do their own stuff, right? So for example, in this particular case, what you're seeing is a very complex enterprise which is doing multiple things. They have various business systems, HR systems, finance systems, customer relationship management systems, and so on and so forth. And all of these needs to talk to each other, and then they would have their own mobile applications, web applications, which needs to access all this functionality. So if an enterprise has to run its business, it needs to connect all of this together, right? So this is where the APIs came. So when I said earlier, APIs hides the implementation complexity. So what is here, you see in the top, the APIs, API 1, API 2, API 3, the red colored boxes. Those are the boxes which are the APIs. They basically connect all that is there behind the scenes. That is the implementation complexity it is hiding, so that the apps that we develop, whether it is a mobile app or whether it is a web application or any application that we develop, they can just use that functionality through these APIs without worrying about what is going behind the scenes, right? So it makes it possible to connect to any service without worrying about how the service is implemented. Now, to little go into the details of API. So this is one of the things that probably you need to keep it in your mind as you go on to next 2 weeks and 3 weeks. We will see more of these, right? As in, what are the different kinds of APIs that are there? So if I go to the previous diagram, right? So what you see here is basically what we call north-south APIs. What do you mean by north-south APIs? So if you typically see a map, right? North is at the top and south is at the bottom, right? That's how we normally denote maps. So that is what's happening here. So north is where the API consumers are, the mobile applications, the portal applications, and any other applications that we develop, the apps that we develop. And the APIs, what they're doing, they allow you to communicate now to south. South is where all the systems are there. This is the core systems, the CRM systems, and and BPM systems, and so on and so forth. So the API is facilitating that communication for you. This is called north-south APIs. So north-south APIs are typically APIs that you use it for building and integrating applications, right? So these are basically internal APIs, and actually I missed. I actually kind of flipped the names. East-west I put at the top and north-south in the bottom. Actually, it is a reverse. North-south is where the UX and partner and APIs communicate with the systems, and East-west is where what is happening in East-west is basically East is basically left and right, and West is on the left, right? If you see it from a map perspective. So when you see here, and if, for example, in this diagram, so there is a conversational AI, that box that you see in the channel application, the blue box, right? And it wants to talk to, say, a user workflow, which is the pinkish red color box, you see on the left-hand side, user workflow. Now, if these two need to talk to each other, this is called east-west communication, okay? So this is typically used for internal integration. So internal integration as in within the enterprise, if we need to talk to each other, and if one system wants to talk to each other, that's where internal integration comes in, right? So internal integration, microservice integration, this is typically east-west integration. North-south integration is the UI application, the mobile application, the web applications, the partners, like an enterprise would have partners, like for example, something like DHL, right? DHL is a shipping company. So they deliver shipments to across the world, and everybody is their partner, right? Like Amazon is their partner, Flipkart is their partner, Tata Click is their partner, Reliance Jio is partner. Now all of these partner wants to know, when they send a courier or a shipment to their customer, they want to know what is the status. So DHL has to offer this partner API so that Amazon will know what is the current status, so that Amazon in their mobile app or in their website, they will show the status of the order, right? Where currently it is, whether it is already shipped, if it is shipped, where it is in terms of location, and is it already went out for delivery, and so on and so forth, right? So all of these are called partner APIs. So essentially the APIs are two types: north south, which are basically meant for partners, mobile apps, etc., to integrate into the enterprise; east west, which is basically meant for internal integration and microservices integration and those kinds of use cases. I hope this is clear. I'll move to the next slide. If there are any questions, you can start putting the questions also. I'll periodically look at the questions and then answer any question. Operating system from another. Yeah, so I mean, I think this is a good question, Rafali. So the earlier APIs, way back when I described the evolution, right? It used to be proprietary, but now we are in a state, as I said, web and internet become the technology, right? So, and web is a universal technology. Anybody can access from anywhere. So the APIs that we develop now, they don't no longer differ from operating system to operating system anymore. Okay, so that is the answer to your question. So anybody else has any questions, please type it in. I will periodically answer them. Okay. How SOAP is REST? No, SOAP is not REST. So SOAP is different from REST. It is a older technology. SOAP is based on XML as a standard, and SOAP had a lot more comprehensive in terms of it has a lot of features, and it is very very what do you say, it was meant to replace protocols like RMI and DCOM and so on and so forth. So it had a lot of the features that were there in those technologies. So that made SOAP very complex to use. That's why slowly we are moving to much more simpler architectures for APIs. So SOAP is not REST. Can we get recordings? That is another question. I'm sure all of you are interested. I think we should be able to host the recordings on YouTube or one of the ACM channels. We will definitely put the recordings. Also, the slides will be distributed through our channels, ACM Deccan channels. So please check out whenever you got a chance. One more question from Deepika. How APIs are different from web applications? Can I get the answer? Yeah, surely. So if I have to take an analogy, right? Now, when we have a mobile application or a web application, what do? We are accessing the functionality that is offered by the web application. Let us take a simple example, right? Now, a simple example is say using Google Maps, right? That is, everybody uses it, so everyone knows about it. So I take a very, very simple example. Now, in a Google Maps, what happens? You type a location, it will show the details in terms of where it is and how do you go there, right? Now, what is happening behind the scenes, if you say it, Google Maps app that you have on the device, it is calling Maps API. Google has a Google Maps API. So the Google Maps API is what is getting called behind the scenes. So you have a web application, the web application essentially calling the API. So that is the difference between web application and the API. So web application is the user interface through which you are calling the APIs, and the APIs are actually getting the necessary data and then giving it back. So that is how the APIs work. So web application is a front end to the APIs, if I have to say that way. And instead of web application, you can have even a voice-based interface, right? So for example, I can say, hey Google, where is this location, right? So in my Android phone, if there is a speaker button and I can press the button and I can say, I can ask a question. Google will tell me the same details. How it is doing, it is a different interface. Now you have a voice interface, you have web interface calling the same API. So API is common to both kind of interfaces. So that is the difference between API and web application. So next question, can we use AI and ML? Yeah, you can create APIs on top of AI services. Like for example, Google offers a API for translating text from one language to other, right? Similarly, Microsoft offers an API to recognize faces in an image, and so on and so forth. So the actual machine learning capability is with Microsoft. Microsoft has developed that machine learning capability. Similarly, IBM Watson, most of you have heard of it. Watson has an API for what we call dialogue. Basically, you can ask questions, it will answer, right? So the actual machine learning and AI models are with them, and they create an API interface on top so that we can access the underlying underlying AI machine learning capabilities using API. So APIs basically simplifies it. We don't need to know how the models are developed, what is the data behind it, how it works. We don't need to know. API simplifies all of that. So just go to Watson, go to Google, just search for Google Translate API or Watson Dialog API. You will see the API specification. You can actually even see how the API works. You can, in fact, after these 3 sessions, you can start actually using those APIs and develop your own cool applications. Okay. Now, one more question from Sai Kumar. Can we compare API with coupling and cohesion concept in software engineering? Yes, definitely. That's a very good question, Sai Kumar. And these are basically APIs essentially decouple, right? The implementation from the actual interface so that the consumers or who are using the APIs can actually easily develop. Cohesion part is actually within the API and implementation of the API. How you implement the API and how you organize the API, it is up to you, right? So that is where the cohesion comes. That is a different concept. Okay, so we will pause the questions for a moment and we will take the questions after a few more slides. Now, this is a very useful slide for all of you to remember. You just by heart the slide, and this is how APIs really are developed. Okay, so when we have to develop, first thing we need to do, the numbers you see, right? There are 2 parts to this diagram. There are 2 circles you see, the big circle and the small circle. The big circle is the API producer, the people who are developing the APIs. In my earlier example, I gave an example of DHL as the shipment company, and they have an API to track the status of a courier or a status of a package, right? Now you type the package number, AWD number, and you will get the details. Now the left-hand side is basically DHL. DHL basically has to develop these APIs, or Google, which is developing the Maps API, or some other company like Watson, which is developing Dialog API, or it could be Indian government, which is offering APIs to say check the COVID data, for example, right? Whatever that could be. So the producer is the person or the organization or the entity which is creating the APIs, right? They're producing the APIs. On the right-hand box, you see the smaller circle, that is consumers. This is basically who are using the APIs. In the case of DHL, this would be Amazon, this would be Flipkart, this would be Reliance Jio, Tata Click, or whoever that is, right? So they will be the consumers. And of course, we are also consumers. So we can also use those APIs to develop our own cool apps, right? So what happens at the producer end, right? What the producer will do. First producer, what will do? They strategize. Strategize as in what APIs to develop. Who will use these APIs? Why will they use these APIs? Will they pay us for using these APIs? And so on and so forth. That is called strategy. Then they do design. Design as in what should that API do? What all the data elements it expects as input? What all the data elements it expects as output? Then the next step is called mocking. So once you design, you really don't develop the actual API yet. What you will do is that you will kind of test the API, whether is it API good enough, are the developers are able to understand this API, all those details. So that is called mocking, right? Mocking and testing. Mocking is basically a dummy implementation, and testing is to see how the API works. And once that is done, we actually implement the APIs. Now what DHL will do? DHL will have their own systems where they actually have the information about the courier and what is happening with the courier and all of that. So the API then will talk to all those systems and then get those details. So that is the implementation. Once the implementation is done, it gets deployed. Deployed means it is put it in a good server, where or on a cloud or wherever they want to host the API, and that API then will be exposed, right, to everyone to use. Now, when you are exposing a API for anyone to use, any consumer to consume the API, one of the things that you need to do is secure the API. Nobody should hack the API. Nobody should use the APIs in unauthorized way. Like if you remember, I think some of you know, right? There were a lot of APIs or apps, mobile apps that were stealing the data from IRCTC. And what IRCTC does, IRCTC is the provider of our railway reservations in India, right? So people used to steal the IRCTC data. What they meant is that reservation data and ability to book a ticket and all of that. And they used to call those APIs unauthorized way and make reservations, right? So they used to offer reservations in an offline way. So many people, complained, and then they realized that APIs need security, so they need some kind of authorization. Only authorized people only can consume the APIs. We will touch upon that topic in week 3, as in what do we mean by API authorization and why, how do we implement, and so on and so forth. Okay. And then the last one is the management. Management is basically sending the documentation of the APIs to people, and then deploying multiple versions of the APIs, and all of that is the management part. Now on the consumer side, where we actually start operating the APIs, that is where the developers of the apps, like say I'm developing an app working with RCTC to create a new reservation app, right? Or I created a new startup which needs information from IRCTC to give some information, like say railway uh, uh, timetables or whatever that could be. So that is where the discovery starts. So basically, I need to understand how to use the API. Then I will develop my own app using those APIs. Then I consume it. Then the other parts, monitor and monetization, that is from the IRCTC point of view. They will try to see how many times I call the API. Am I abusing the API? Am I calling like say millions of times in a few minutes, right? That would mean that there is an extreme load on their servers. So that should not happen. So they'll monitor the APIs in terms of how the users are using it. And finally, what they also have to do, they have to charge the consumers. Like for example, if Google Maps, right? Anybody can use Google Maps API, but Google put limits. Nobody can use the API beyond say something like 1,000 times in a day. After 1,000 times, you have to pay Google for using Maps API, right? Because no, Google doesn't want somebody to create another cool app which looks like Google Maps, but it is not Google Maps, right? Then Google will lose business. So what Google has to do in that case, they have to charge for using their API, so that others will not develop a competing app like Google Maps, and then they offer free, and they are not doing the hard work of what Google is doing to create the maps, right? So that should not happen. So that is where the monetization comes. So Google will look at how many times the API is getting used, and accordingly they monetize, right? So this is basically the API lifecycle. This is any API that we develop, it goes through all these steps, right? So some elaborate, some may not be elaborate depending on the type of API, etc. But these are all the steps. Hope this is clear. Any questions? If you have, I can answer. So again, Mir Rafa asked the question: is it difficult to build or design an API? It is not very difficult, Mir. We will go through that process as we go through in the next this week and next 2 weeks. So then we'll go to the next section. That is, I'll hand it over to Danish. Danish is going to take over, and he'll explain the REST and REST APIs and some of the modern APIs, right? What is currently there. And this is what you really want to learn so that you can develop cool applications using APIs. Over to you, Danish.
Yeah, thank you, Arvind. Hello, everybody. Let us now look at how APIs work, right? So, Arvind, in the first slide.
Danish, you want to share the screen because you want to
Yeah.
run through the thing as well,
Sure.
right? Okay.
Yeah. Let me know if you can see the screen.
Yes, we can.
Yeah,
see.
we can see.
So this is in continuing with the first slide that Arvind explained, where there is a consumer, and then there is an API, and then there is an application or a data store that is there behind that. So in web APIs, there is a concept of state, right? So what is state? So basically, you have some changes that you can do to change the state. For example, you place an order on Amazon, Flipkart, somewhere, right? So an order gets created. So there is an entry. So there was nothing earlier, then an order got created. So the state was created. After that, if there is an update to that order, which means after payment, the Amazon or some e-commerce site says that the order is in process. So in that case, the state has changed from created to, let's say, under process or processed, or it will say shipped. So there are changes that are happening to a particular resource. In this case, the resource is the order and it is undergoing these changes. And that is stored somewhere in an application or in a database or in some other data store. So this API allows changing or querying or looking at this information. Let's say again, continuing with the example, this order information through HTTP methods. So HTTP is the protocol of the web, right? So whatever we use on the browser, we always go with HTTP or HTTPS. So the APIs that are developed also adhere to this HTTP protocol. So the HTTP protocol basically gives you 4 methods to look at the resources. There are more methods, but these are the common ones, right? So get is a very simple one. So I can say get and then give the order number in that same URL, whatever you type on the browser, that URL, you can actually say some ecommerce.com/order/order ID, right? Just to give a simple example. It will be actually complex in real life, but to understand. And then that particular API implementation will take the order ID, go to the data store where that order information is stored, and it will give it as a response. Typically, the response is given in a JSON format. Hopefully, everybody is familiar with JavaScript. So JSON is basically a JavaScript object notation. It's a simple string, typically name value with curly brackets, right? So easier to parse. Earlier XML was used, but XML became very heavy. There was a lot of tags, structure was big. So when the JSON became popular because it was smaller and easy to parse. And also it was native to JavaScript. So what this JSON gives is basically whatever you ask for it. So you say get order, so and so order number, and it will give you the details of that order in this particular JSON format. If you say post, right? Typically post is associated with creating an insert. So hopefully everybody is familiar with the CRUD operations: create, retrieve, update, and delete. So you can mentally map these to those CRUD operations. So if you say create, you want to create, you will use the post. So you will say post order number so and so, in which case an order gets created. So this will not generally be done by us consumers, but it will be done by the e-commerce system. So you are placing an order in Amazon or Flipkart. Once you place the order, that e-commerce application will internally say post an order, which means one new order gets created with whatever details you have asked for. If you cancel that order, it might get deleted. There may be other operations, or it might go into put, which means they will update that status to cancelled. So basically, delete means delete that particular information, that resource, or if you do put, it will update that information. So for example, order was placed, after that the order got shipped. So you can actually do a put to update that order status from processed or from received to shipped. And then get, you will basically get the details of that particular order. So we will also see just in a few minutes after these slides how this consumer works, what are the ways to or how do we develop this consumer, what inputs we have to give, and what response we will get. Apart from that, we will also see what are the clients that are available. There are some popular clients which you can use for testing your APIs. You don't need to write any code, just you give the URL of the API and you will get the response. We will take a look at that also. So just to again move forward, so the REST API is use HTTP verbs or methods. So these are those verbs: the get, put, post, delete. Then you need to have somewhere to see what that API does, right? So as Arvind mentioned, the API specification in the first slide. So API specification is not part of the API, but it describes an API. It tells what is there inside that API. You don't need to open the code and see what is written inside. You can just see the open API specification or other formats like Swagger, RAML. All these are specifications, which means they will tell you what that API does. So in this example, we may have an API that will say, let's say, order processing. In that, it may have 4 methods. It will say get, you have to give this input, you will get this output. Put, same thing, you will give this input and you will get this output. For all these methods which it supports, it will give those details saying if you want to use this API, if you want to call this method, you need to give this parameter as input. You will get this response as an output. If you don't, if there is a problem, you will get an error. And for that error, there will be different types of error codes. Again, they are also following the HTTP convention. So for example, if you are not able to get an order, you gave an incorrect order number. So it will come and say 404. You might have seen this in some websites. Something happened, some error is there, or you gave a wrong information, right? So it will say 404, not found. We didn't find that order. Or it will, some processing happened, some backend error happened. So it will say 500 error. So these are things which will come back to you as a error. So either you will get your order details as a response, which is your success response, which is inside, you will see it is a code is 200. But if you are getting an error, you will get the error codes, and along with that, some meaning will come. What happened? We were not able to find the order, or we will not able to process your order. There was some issue on our side. Either you gave a wrong input, in which case you get one type of error, or we had in the server or in this backend or in this API, some issue happened due to which we could not give you a response. So 2 types of errors. Okay, so that is with regard to your specifications. So they will tell you what this API takes as input, what it will give as output or error. And for each of the methods that are getting implemented, these things will be there. So we will see this in detail in the next session. In the next week, we will see how do we create an open API specification, what are the inputs that we need to give, and what are the responses also that we need to model. So after that, we will create an actual API, open API implementation. Okay, so but that will be next week. So this week we will in the hands-on look at the clients. And lastly, if you see all the cloud and digital architectures, right, they are made up of APIs. APIs are the fundamental building blocks. As Arvind mentioned, APIs are now used across the web, right? Earlier they were local, now they are prevailing everywhere, especially from a web API point of view. They are becoming the standard. They have become the standard. They use HTTP, which means if you want to use web APIs, there is a lot of material available, standard based. You don't need to worry if I am writing, if I am calling this API, whether it will work in the same way, whether it will give the same response, right? So all those worries are gone. So because of that, all the cloud and digital architectures, they are using these web APIs or the APIs as the fundamental building blocks. If there are any questions, we can post it here. Okay. Let us now look at the clients that are available. After the hands-on, we'll take a quick look at one of the clients. First, we'll try to develop a client, and then we'll also look at one of these which are available. So what is the purpose of these clients? So the clients are useful to test the APIs that are developed. So like for example, the order API, right? Continuing with that example. So we have built that order API, right? And then we want to test it. So whether it works fine. So for that purpose, even for mocking, some of them, these clients can be used. So you can give some inputs and you can check whether the response is coming correctly. So you have an order application where you store the order details, and then you write an API where you have put all these methods: get, put, post, delete. Now you want to test whether they work properly. So first you want to test by creating an order. So you use a post method, and then you create a order using that. So for that, how will you test? You can, the browser will not work here. So if you are using the browser, it will work only for get method, wherein you don't give any additional information. So if you are just giving a string, it will take it from that browser location, and your API will give a response. But if you are doing post, it will expect a body. It will expect that there has to be some kind of a body here. So in those cases, actually, you will have to use these clients, or you will have to build some clients. Okay, so that is one of the reasons why you use the clients. The other reasons are you have options to test the security also. So as Arvind mentioned, APIs, if we don't have security, then somebody could misuse. They will overload that. They will bombard that, and that API will crash. Actually, wherever that API is running, that server will crash. So you can secure it with multiple options. So you can try them out using these clients to see which is the best option for the consumer. So before you actually finalize, you can try them out using these clients. So what are the options that you want to give to secure that particular API? Whether you want to secure it using username, password, or you want to do a token, which means you will ask that person to register before and then give. We will see that option also in the hands-on, and then we will basically test it out using these clients. The other thing that is becoming popular is in many of the actual projects, right, where we do the development, there is a lot of automation, which means there are these clients such as Postman that give you these scripts. Whatever you are using to test that API, you can save it as a script, and you can make it take some inputs. For example, if you are testing that order API, if you want to test it with multiple order numbers, right? So you can make that as a script and take that input order ID as an input, and you can test it whether you want to create that order, delete that order, or you want to retrieve that order. That input and output can be created as part of the script, and that script can be used for automation. So during the development, you can put that script and you can call that script. So when you do this, you actually make that development or the automation as part of the API development lifecycle. You saw those two diagrams or those two circles which Arvind actually showed, right? So in that, this automation will help. So if we go back quickly to that slide, in this cycle. So when you do the testing, if you use these scripts, it will help in automation. So this entire cycle, you will actually have the scripts. So once your design is complete, you can have these scripts. You can actually implement it and again come back and test it if you are adding more functionality, whatever, right? So these scripts, you don't need to manually sit and use that client. So that is the advantage of having these scripts. So this Postman and other clients support these scripts. Okay. There is a question. Can we use API to develop or to create a mobile app or web application? Yes, we can use APIs to develop both mobile apps and web applications. So in both the cases, what we will do is, if you see in the hands-on, we will basically have to have an API URL, and it will take some input and it will give some output. So in your mobile application, you will call that endpoint, that URL. You will give the input, whatever needs to be given, like for example, for getting the pin code, right, which Arvind said. So if you are developing a mobile app in which if you want to use the pin code, So you will call that URL in which you will give the input pin code, and then you will get a response with the area locality details. So you will take that and you will show it in your mobile application. Same thing you can do in web application. You can call that URL, give the input as your pin code, and you will get the response. Okay. There are some more questions in chat. Okay. So these are general information. Okay. If there are any other questions, please put it before we go to the uh, hands-on. So let us actually look at what the hands-on is about. Uh, so I'll give you an overview. Perhaps Arvind also can add to this. So what we are trying to do today is a very simple hands-on. Okay. So NASA has a lot of APIs. So they have very complex APIs, and there are some nice APIs that we can consume to get a view of say for example this picture, right? So this API that we are looking at is called astronomy picture of the day API. What it does is it will give you a nice picture that they have taken from space. Okay. So to consume this API, what we have to do is we have to actually go to their website. This is all done. I will show you. We don't need to do it again today, but if you were to do it from scratch, this is what we will do. So we will go to their website at this link. We'll go to api.nasa.gov, this website. Okay. And then you will see that there are some APIs here. So you will browse these APIs. So there are many APIs. We have chosen this astronomy picture of the day. Okay. So if you give call this particular URL, okay. So this is that URL. If you call this, you will get this picture. But simply if you call, you will not get it. You have to give it some information. See, this is how you have to call. You will call this, okay, and they are saying you need to give a key, some authentication they want to do. If you don't have this option of this key, what will happen is that somebody can write some program where they can repeatedly call it in a loop or something, and this API will keep on responding. And after some time, depending on the server utilization, that server might crash also, or there could be other bad things that could happen. So they want to prevent such unauthorized thing, right? And other users may not be able to even call that API, because one person is writing in a loop and they are calling this API, others are not able to get that response, or it is overloading that server. To prevent all that, they are asking us to give an API key. So API key is the way to ensure that somebody will not be able to bombard this API. So they will put a limit saying for this API key, let's say we are going and registering. So I'm giving the name and then email address, and I'm saying sign up. So I already did this. So I got a key, some key 123 I've got. So when I am going to call this API again, in the space of this demo key, I will give that 123, whatever key I got. So if I give that key here, what will happen is I will get a response. I will get a response which will give a link to this picture. Okay. And the other important thing is for this key, there will be some restrictions. So we cannot simply keep on calling multiple times. So we can call for a specified number of times only. See here, they are saying for web service, there is some limit, 1000 requests per hour. Okay. And then there is a demo key. For that also they have some limits, hourly, daily, etc. Okay. So and they will give you the response, how much you have consumed, etc. The reason why they put all these restrictions is because they want to ensure that this API is available for everybody. So in our order example, if we have an API key, it means that everybody, every application, everybody who's placing a request will have to give that API key to call that order API, and then they will get a response. Without that key, if somebody is calling an order API, they will not be able to make that call. It will say, you are not given the key, you are unauthorized, you cannot call this particular thing. So they want to ensure that only the legitimate, only the allowed consumer application can call that particular API. So that is what we are going to see here. And so if you give that response, I mean, call that, you will get a JSON response with the link of that particular photo. So we will see that also. So if you are ready, we can do the hands-on. So to do the hands-on, all you need is a Google or a Gmail account, and you can open a browser and go to this particular link. Okay, meanwhile, I will answer the question. So there is a question which is, which language is used to develop APIs? So you can use any language. So most popular ones are JavaScript, Java, Python. Any language can be used to develop APIs. Preferably the newer ones are these. You could develop on C, C++ also. There is no restriction in terms of using any language, because your API is covered, or it is exposed through a HTTP, right? So for that, you will interact using HTTP only. As you see here, you will basically call a particular API using HTTP, and then that method. Whatever language is written, we don't know. It is hidden to us. For us, we only need to know this URL. We will pass whatever input parameter we have to give, and we will get a response. Whether you write that API in Java, JavaScript, C, C++, that is all not known to us. We only need to understand this URL, whatever we have to call, what inputs we have to give, and what response or error will come from that API. That's all. So if you want, you can start the hands-on. So just open a browser and click this particular link. So you should hopefully get this editor here.
So Danesh, why don't
Yeah.
you type the URL in the window
Okay.
So that people can copy it.
Sure.
How do you send a message to everyone? Mm, I think in
All
the chat.
panelists and attendees.
Okay.
Yeah, I have pasted the URL.
That's good. So that people can just click it and go.
Yeah, I will paste the other URLs also that are required.
Yeah, we got it.
Sure. So there will be an agreement box. If you just click agree and say okay, you should come to this particular editor.
So is everybody is able to get through here? So basically, you just click the URL, then it will. If you are already, if you have a Google account, it will ask for your Google account details, and then you will be able to see the screen. You'll have to sign in using your Google account. Okay.
after you have come to this place, you can actually do the next thing. So you can type git clone and this URL. So this URL github.com I've pasted in the chat. So you can copy that URL from here. You need to type git clone and this URL.
Yeah. So everybody ensure that you go through this, because this would be the same set of steps we will be doing in week 2 and week 3 also, right? So get through this, take time and ensure that you are at the this. So what we are doing here is that, I mean, if you want to understand, if you are able to understand, I think fine. If you're not, what we are doing is that Google offers a service called Cloud Shell. Essentially, it is a computer terminal that is there on the Google Cloud, which you can use. Anybody can use. It is a free service Google offers. So as a developer, you can log into your Cloud Shell, and then it comes with a lot of built-in programs which you can do. Like if you want to run Linux on your own machine, instead you can use this Google Cloud Shell. Essentially, it is a Linux box, right? So you can do everything that Linux can do. It has certain limits, but all the basic things, like it has Node.js installed, Python installed, Git installed. So you can use it like a nice developer machine.
Yeah, if there are any issues, please put it on the questions. If you're having any challenges or any questions.
So everybody is on Cloud Shell now. You're able to see the prompt where you can see ls, and you can see list of directories where you should have only one directory probably start with. I think Danesh, you can start, because I just started and I was already able to log in. So you can start.
Okay. So then we can, if you have done the git clone, then go into the ACM API workshop. Do a CD ACM API workshop, one word. Okay. And once you are inside that directory, we need to execute one node command. So I'll tell you why we have to do this, and then we can actually
So
go
I
into
hope
the.
everybody is done with git clone, right? The URL Danesh has earlier pasted in the chat window. Git clone, git space clone space the URL that was pasted, which is https github.com/daneshjaki/acm API workshop. So if you're able to do, once you're done that, you would actually see that there is a cloning that happens, right? So you would see a new directory created in your home folder. If you do ls, you will see ls. If you type, you will see a folder or a directory called ACM API workshop. Now, yeah, go on, Danish. So you cd into that directory, cd space ACM API workshop. Now you will be in that directory. Okay, so I think everybody is able to do, hopefully. So yeah, so let's go on, Danish, next step.
Yeah. So step 5 is type npm space install space express. So I will tell you why this is. So we are using Node.js, which is JavaScript on the server side, right? To tell it very simply, so you can write JavaScript to run inside your browser to do some animations or data validations or whatever things, right? So you can do that. That is on the browser client side. On the server side, when you want to run JavaScript, the preferred way is to use this framework called as Node.js. So in Node.js, you have a lot of utilities or easy ways to call some API, to make some HTTP calls, all these things. So how we do that is one of the modules, right? So you are all familiar with modules. So Node.js comes with lot of modules. So sometimes you will get a module out of the box, which means you don't need to write this npm install, etc. But this Express is a good module. It is a useful module where you can use it to call these HTTP commands, request, response, parsing, all those things. Whatever you will see in a minute inside the code is in a way enabled through this Express module. So this Express module helps us make these HTTP calls. That is why we want to install this. So NPM is Node Package Manager, which is basically used to install these modules. So you
Sir,
use NPM.
sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
One message is from Ashrita. Sir, I got no such directory present.
Oh, okay.
Did
Have
you run
you?
git clone, Ashrita? Git clones, git space clone space HTTPS, that URL, the entire URL that Danesh has posted. So you have to do it, and then it will actually say cloning. And once it is all done in the shell in the Google, so maybe Danesh, you can show the ls and show the what they will see.
Yeah.
So
So
actually outside this, right? Before.
So you will run this git clone here. So here you don't need to look at these other things. So this ACM API workshop gets created when you do a git clone. So if I do git clone now, it will basically create this again.
Where we have to clone.
So wherever you will have your username at Cloud Shell, right? Do you have like this? Your username at Cloud Shell, your whatever Gmail ID or Google ID at Cloud Shell, something like this, you will have a prompt, right? Okay, so at that
Go ahead.
prompt,
I
you
mean,
do
let's
git clone.
see. She would have to figure out in that case. Yeah.
Yeah. So at this prompt, you have to do a git clone. Then you will get this ACM API workshop. Once you get that, do a CD and go inside that. And inside this, everybody can do an ls and see whether you have these things. So these would have come from GitHub. Okay, so you would have got this API client JS and these other four things. Don't worry about this other one. These JS things you need to have, especially this API client JS, right, which we want to see should be there. Other things we don't need for today. How to clone? Okay, how to clone? You have to use the command. So I will show you this command again. So git clone, as Arvind mentioned, and then this URL I have put in the chat box. So type
So
this command.
I hope all of you are familiar with Git and Git clone, right? So what Git clone is doing, Git is the version control system where we store the code, right? In this case, we are using a service called GitHub, and GitHub is where Danesh has put already the code. He has written the code already, right? So that we can just use it and see it. And he has put it at that URL, https github.com Danesh Jaki /ACM API workshop. Actually, if you point out your browser, you can see that code already, right? It will be shown in the browser. Now, what we are trying to do is we are trying to get that into our Linux box, which is the Google Cloud Shell, right? So you have to type this command called git. Git is the client for any Git service. So, and then we are typing clone. Clone is basically you're trying to copy from the web to your local Cloud Shell, right? So that is what happening there. So git clone, and if you type the URL, the code that is already there in the GitHub now will be coming to your local Cloud Shell. And it creates a folder called ACM API workshop. That is a directory it is creating. Okay, because that is the repository name. As you can see in the URL at the last, there is something called ACM API workshop. So that would be the repo name. That is a repository name, and that repository is getting created in your local Cloud Shell in the terminal that you have. Now you have to, next step you have to do, once git clone is done, it will show that cloning is being done and it shows it is successful. Then you will see a folder called ACM API workshop. If you do ls, you will see that folder. Now you cd into it, cd, and then you have to type the new directory that is created, which is ACM API workshop. So once you cd into it, that is what you see here, you're seeing in the screen, right? This what you see on the screen is essentially what has been copied from GitHub onto your Cloud Shell. Okay, hope you are able to follow. Okay, go ahead, Danish.
Yeah. So then in this folder, hope would have executed this.
That is the
However,
next command. That is straightforward. What we are trying to do is we are trying to install a module called Express, which is actually used with Node.js to create these APIs. Okay, so Express is a kind of it is a web serving module for Node.js. It is a framework for creating APIs. Okay, if I have to put it that way. So once you type in, once you go into that ACM API workshop directory, you type npm space install space express. Okay, once you do it, then it will say that it will basically download some more software into your local terminal, that is the Cloud Shell editor. And once you done that, you would actually again come back to the same prompt. Right now you're at the prompt. Take over, Danish, from here.
yeah. So once you have done this npm install express, next is you have to basically run that API client. But before we run that, we want to see what it does, right? So we need to understand what that API client does, which API it is calling, right? That NASA API code we will see the call to that code, right? So to see that, inside that Cloud Shell, there is one editor. We can call that editor by typing edit. But we want to edit this particular file. We want to see what is there. So type edit API client.js. I'm also going to do that. So once you do that, it will open this editor. Okay. So in this editor, it will open the file, whatever you want to see. So hopefully, everybody would be able to come till here. If there are any challenges, again, please post it in questions and we can resolve it. Okay, I'll start explaining the code before we run it. So first is we are basically using the HTTP to make a call. So though I'm putting the variable as HTTP, it is actually HTTPS, and we are requiring this module, which is coming through Express. So that is why we did the npm install Express. Once you do this, what we want to do is basically call this NASA API. So if you remember, we actually went to this nasa.gov, that particular link, so which is here, right? And they have told us how to make that call. So we are following the same thing. We are calling api.nasa.gov, all these details. And this is the important part. So I told you I registered and I got this particular API key. So once I got the API key, I am giving that as an input here. Why? Because they are telling we need to give that API key. Only then we will be able to get a response. Otherwise, they will say unauthorized or you cannot call this API, etc. So you are to give that particular input here. Apart from this, there are other inputs also you can give. But for this example, for this hands-on, we are giving only the API key as the input. Okay. And the method is get. So if you remember, we have put post, etc. But in this example, we are only calling get. So these are the two inputs. One is the URL of that particular API, which should most importantly have the API key, and what method we are invoking it on. Where are we going to give these details? We are giving the method details here as part of the options. You can set other options also here, but here we are only giving the method. Just logging it, what is the URL that is going, what is the method, and now here we are actually calling a request method. We are making a request on that particular API. So we are giving the URL. Whatever URL we defined here, we are giving it here. We are giving the options also, which means we want this particular block to also go into this request. And once we get the response, we are actually executing this arrow function. So when we are having the response, we are storing it inside this variable called data. So response is that details which will say where that photo is stored, right? The purpose of this API is to give us the photo of the day, astronomy photo of the day, right? So APOD. So it will give as part of a JSON string. So that JSON string will come as part of this response. And that response, if we don't store it in a variable, it will get lost. So what we are doing is once we make this request call, there is a response that will come back. So in JavaScript, there is a shorthand way to write a function, which means when you get a response, you execute this particular code. So in this code, you get the response and you are storing it in the data. So response has, to keep it very short, if you can have a error response, or you can have a actual data, or you can have an end response, which means response got over. So you have a response where it will say, there is the data, this is the data, this is the JSON. So you have one method where you say response.on. When you get the data, put it inside this data variable. Okay. So you store it here. Once you store it, keep storing it till that response is over. And once the response, there is a end saying the response is over, everything has been given. So you will get an end. So that time you will just say that it is completed. That's all. So here we are just putting it on the screen. In a real scenario, you could use this data and do something. For example, if you are checking the status of an order, or if you are getting the PIN code, somebody asks how we will do the web or mobile app development using APIs. So if I'm writing this code inside a mobile app, if I want to show that, I will probably take this data. So let's say I'm calling a pin code API. So I'm giving the pin code here, and then I'm calling this HTTP request with this particular URL. I'm getting the response, which will have the locality. So I will get the data, which will be the locality. And after getting the data, I will get an end message saying, that's all, response is over. So here, what I will do is, I will take that locality details and I will put it in some text box or some mobile control to show it in that particular mobile app. So that is the purpose of this response.on end. That's all. After that, we are saying it is over. We are done with it. Sometimes somebody can say, after this request, I can call one more request, etc. In those cases, there will be a continuous another function. But in this case, this is what we are doing. High level, again, we are getting the module for interacting or doing HTTP operations. We are creating that URL of the API where we are giving the input as an API key. We are also setting the method saying we want to do a get. We are not doing any modification. We are not deleting or updating or inserting. Just we want to get that data. So we are setting the method as get, and that is part of the options. After that, we are basically making that call to that particular URL using the request method, request function. Once we get that request function, we are basically getting a response. In that response, we are storing it in a data, and that data is what we are displaying once the response is complete. So if we want to see how it works, we will have to execute the step number 7, which is Node API client. So it will give you the response. So basically, if you run this, it will say, what is the URL, what is the method, and after the method, whatever is coming here, this entire thing is your response. So it is telling you what is the date, explanation about the image, all these things, and then you are getting the image URL also. So if I want to open this, I can open this and see. I am getting a output, which is some image. Third-party cookies disabled. There is a question. Even after I enable, it is showing the same. Do I need to restart Chrome? Are you using any incognito window, or are you using a new normal window? because sometimes this will
Incognito, the third-party cookies will be disabled. So in the top, in the URL bar on the right, in the URL bar, right, on the extreme right, you will see a small icon. You click on that, and you have to enable third-party cookies, right? So once you do that, it will again refresh the screen, and then it will allow you to see the editor.
I think it got resolved.
Okay, cool.
So that is the hands-on for today. Arvind, you want to add any points?
Yeah, that's good, Danish. I don't think I have to add much, but I think what I suggest everyone to do is to go through the code. Now that you have access to Google Cloud Shell, at any time you can log into your Cloud Shell, the same URL, shell.cloud.google.com, and you can see the code. You can even play with it, right? So if you want to change anything and then want to try something else, please do try. And also those who are not familiar with Node.js, I definitely recommend that you learn Node.js. It is very versatile, very useful for you wherever you are. JavaScript is very easy to learn. I think most of you probably already familiar with JavaScript. Node.js is just a small additional learning curve from JavaScript. So go through Node.js, there are hundreds of thousands of tutorials, videos on the web. If you spend about 1 hour over the next 1 week, 1 hour or 1.5 hours over the next 1 week, you will be able to appreciate how to use Node.js, what it takes to use Node.js, right? So please spend time. I highly recommend it. So you'll be a lot more productive in the next session when we start that. Those who are not able to do today's, please do it offline. It is fairly easy. You can follow the same instructions that we just showed. What we can do also is that if possible, we will try to share the presentation also in the next 1-2 days, so that you can actually go through the slides also by next Thursday, right? So so that's about it. I think we already crossed 6 o'clock. So we will close it for today, and we will start again same time next week. Next week we will be starting at 4:30 again, right? It's Thursday. Mark
Sir.
your calendars.
Test. Yes, sir. I'm Dr. Krishnakirti, V-Chair of ACM Hyderabad Deccan Chapter. I'd like to thank Mr. Danish and Mr. Arvind for sharing your profound and valuable information on APIs with our participants. It's really interesting session to know about APIs, where we usually all this actually we are seeing every day actually. And thank you both of the speakers.
Thank you, Dr. Krishnakirti.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I would like to thank participants for attending this session. One small announcement for the participants. Participants, please fill the attendance and feedback form, which is mandatory for all the 3 sessions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Feedback form is just now shared. Please fill that. Attendance form I have shared.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arvind and Ganesh. Yeah.
Thank you.